right, then that being said, good morning, everyone. I am Mario Gangimi, the chair of the Capital Committee, MDTA Capital Committee, and conducting this morning's meeting, which I call to order at 9:08 a.m. In accordance with the live streaming law, this meeting is conducted via video conference and live streamed on the MDTA Capital Committee page. All members of the Capital Committee will have their video active during the entirety of the meeting. However, we do ask it to minimize background noise, that everyone on the line mute your phones or computers. And if you are presenting or answering a question, you have your video and audio on when speaking. And when done, please turn off your video and put your audio back on mute. Today, there are no members of the public or elected officials or media that have pre-registered to comment. So we can move to agenda item number 1, which is review and approval of the Capital Committee open session meeting minutes of December 3rd, 2024.
So moved, Member Cox.
Second, Member Gaines.
All right, Member Cox moves, Member Gaines seconds. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. We got us all. Great, thank you. Item number 2 is Brian Wolf without the E for contract 2024-03, which is the CMI services for the FSK bridge rebuild. Mr. Wolf, you are on. Unless he's not.
Oh, yes, I'm here. Good morning.
Okay.
Morning, Brian.
Morning. Good morning, Capital Committee members. I'm Brian Wolf, Deputy Director of Construction. I'm here to present the Construction Management and Inspection Services contract. Contract number MDTA 2024-03. The services to be performed under this contract are construction management, inspection services for the Maryland Transportation Authority. The consultant shall provide professional construction management services related to supplementing and supporting the construction phase of the Maryland Transportation Authority Consolidated Transportation Program. The consultant shall perform services in the following general areas. Service shall include, but not to be limited to, constructability review, conducting detailed inspection of all construction work, including erosion and sediment control, contracts, compliance, maintenance of traffic, detailed material testing, critical path method, cash flow schedules, document control, and assisting the authorities' compliance officers with monitoring and enforcing of disadvantaged business enterprises goals. There were a total of 7 proposals, for which 3 of them were selected for $20 million apiece. The 3 selected were GPI, Gannett Fleming. Second one is Michael Baker International, and the third one is AECOM. And so they on these contracts, we had a DBE goal of 33%, which all 3 bidders reached that 33%. And so let's see. These contracts are under DBE, so there is no sub goals for DBE. Firms did meet all. And I am seeking approval from the Capital Committee for the CMI service contracts.
Thank you, Brian, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Mario.
Happy New Year, Brian.
Any questions from the committee here?
Just for
Chairman.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yes, Member Cox first, then Member Gaines.
Okay. All 3. The second one. Are all 3 been performing in accordance with the guidelines in past contracts?
Yes, sir. They all been good.
No, been no problems.
No problems at all.
Thank you.
Member
I guess
Gaines?
my question is, how do we come up with a budget of 60 million, I guess? That's just a straight percentage of the total estimate of the contract, or I don't know, you tell me. How do we come up with that?
You know, that was based on everything and past experiences, you know, on various projects. And, you know, the magnitude of this project, we went through everything and, you know, broke everything down. And to do this magnitude of projects, we came up with, you know, the 60 million, a breakdown between the three firms. It's just, you know, looking back at previous, you know, smaller ones, then, you know, how big this is going to be and factoring everything in.
Which is a lot more challenging than some of the
Yes.
projects, obviously.
Were the three that we picked, were they relatively equal in, I mean, I assume that this wasn't just monetary, this was qualifications based. Is that true? It's qualifications based?
Yes.
So it was kind of a technical review, you scored them and you came, that's why those other, it's like five, the other five didn't make the cut technically. So you knock it down to these three. Were these three
correct.
all equal in their technical capabilities, or was there a ranking? And the reason why I asked that is we had this happen once before where, you know, somebody was much stronger than the others. So we actually gave them a little bit more of the budget, and the others that were less, I don't want to, that scored lower got a little bit less budget. So I'm just asking how we did that. It sounds like they were the same, relatively equal.
Yeah, they were really close. I mean, they all got what I told you they were scored. That's how the order they were, but they were all very close in, you know, their performance ratings. And then, you know, the other five or the other four, it was a pretty good breaking point where their technical sport was just not up to par with the top three.
Okay.
How are you assigned the, you know, the work orders amongst the three of them? I mean, who decides? I mean, how do you do? We decide, I guess, who we want to do what we want them to do, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, we'll, you know, they all have an equal share, but we'll go through and, you know, some of them have a little bit stronger points in certain aspects, but we'll go through and back through and divvy it up properly in their specialties. But I mean,
I don't
all
guess
of
we
them,
have to. Yeah. Go ahead.
all of them have great qualifications. All of them met our needs superior, and you know, there's just some of them that might have just a little bit better package. But really feeling good with this these teams.
I mean, availability is part of it too, right? I mean, you can't if you need a lot of bodies on some part of this thing, you can't wait. They got to have them.
Yeah. Yeah, because
that was another. That was another thing.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Sorry. That was another thing we looked at was, you know, how they're packaged together and what the manpower is per company. And, you know, they have a lot based here in the local areas to support us.
Do we have to spend all of this money? Or
Probably so. It's a big job.
In for future for this committee, it probably would be helpful to when we do these more technical proposals that are more qualifications based, it'd be kind of good to understand the criteria with which we judge these teams. Don't have to do it today, but it would just, I think, Member Cox, Member Gaines, and Member Sneed,
I agree.
myself,
Yeah, I agree.
would like to know, you know, what's the technical basis that we made our decisions off of, and how.
Good morning,
how we
Mario.
score.
This is Donna DeCervo. Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year, Donna.
Director of
Happy New
Procurement.
Year.
Donna.
We get to see you at least a few more times.
Donna.
You haven't got rid of me yet. I'm still here till February 1st.
Oh, boy, you got a long time.
I'm gonna soak it all in and jump in here just to try to clarify things. So
Sure.
on these A&Es, we have to request the number of contracts we're going to be getting from TSO, and they're pre-approved. So in this instance, there were only 3. And you're correct, it was qualifications based, which means these scores were ranked technically. And that's why you see the top 3. So we have the best of the best technically qualified firms here. And that's, the other ones, there was no cutoff score, if you will. There's a natural break when we do these A&E contracts that we kind of fall into. And these were the best of the best.
No,
So
I
we
think
negotiate
understand that.
man hours.
Right.
And yeah, but we'll definitely give you more information on the next ones moving forward.
Well, it
Yeah, I just
obviously
want to
won't,
understand how
it
we
won't
score
come
them
out-
in the criteria. Yep.
in the end, it won't come out exactly even. Obviously, it's impossible to make that happen. So I guess DPI gets the first crack because they're one, I guess, right?
I guess it depends on what the activity
assignments.
is.
It
Yeah.
depends on the
I think-
tasks, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it would depend on what the activity is. If it's,
Right.
geotechnical
Okay.
related, it may be that Michael Baker is the best guy to go out and review the pile driving, for example.
Right.
Just throwing words in his mouth, but yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Donna, for popping on and adding some clarification. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Any more questions of Brian, or is there a motion to approve 2024-03?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Member Gaines approved. Member Sneed seconds. Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
All right.
Aye.
Aye. All right. That was all of us. Thank you, Brian. You're off the hook.
Thank you,
All right,
Brian.
Thank you, guys. Have a good one.
Okay, now we've got Michael Osborne talking to us about the on-call signing construction contracts and kind of giving us an overview and a status.
Right. Good morning. I am Mike Osborne. I am the traffic discipline manager in our Office of Engineering and Construction. Happy to be here today, and Happy New Year to everybody.
Happy New Year to you.
Thank you. So yeah, I'm here to give a quick update, if you will, on our on-call sign lights and sign structures contract series. I believe you have the packet on tab 3. There's a few slides in here, so I'll run through those. On slide 2, we have a quick rundown of the presentation material here. So we'll start with a quick view of the sign statistics based off of all the coverage of our facilities. Some of the background on the types of signs we're talking about, highway signs, the various contracting methods, and then some of the benefits of the various contract methods, and then really focusing on our on-call series of contracts here, the scope of that, and then some of the history, and we'll close it out with a few examples of task orders that we issue on those contracts. So like I said, the slide 3 shows some statistics. As you would expect, you kind of see the spread of the signs on the various facilities, correlating to basically the lane miles. So we have over 15,000 signs across all of our facilities, and we maintain an inventory of those in our GIS database. Moving to slide 4, again, just to be clear what we're talking about here, we're talking about highway signing, so regulatory warning, guide signing, specific services and informational signing for motorists. These are all, in accordance with our federal and state codes, the manual on uniform traffic control devices, et cetera. And moving on to the next slide, this is a little bit about the material that we use for the sign sheeting and substrate. So typically our substrate is either a sheet aluminum or extruded aluminum. We use the sheet for the smaller signs and the extruded for the larger signs. You can see a couple pictures on that slide just to give you a flavor. And then the next slide 6, shows the various support types that we use to support those signs. So anything ranging from wood to ground-mounted steel, bridge-mounted supports, all the way up to our major overhead sign structures. And then the next slide, this is just kind of an overview of how we deliver signing along our facility. So pretty much three categories there are capital projects where we may have a signing specific capital project that would cover a portion of a facility or the entire facility. Typically, we like to try to do a facility-wide replacement when we're doing life cycle replacements, or we may have signs as part of large capital projects like new interchanges, new bridges, as an element of those projects. Of course, our maintenance folks are integral to maintaining the signing and replacing damaged signs and whatnot. Our sign shop does a great job making material for maintenance as needed, and then occasionally we'll work with them to have them fabricate signs and have our contractors install those. And we work closely with the maintenance teams at each facility. And then again, kind of the focus here is our on-call series contracts. So these are task order based contracts, and that gives us the flexibility to sign them based off of the needs as they arise during those contracts. And so next slide, slide 8, why is it beneficial? Again, maintenance does a great job handling what they can. Sometimes the scope of the work is requires some additional resources. So the contractor resources are great then. And one of the benefits is we get fixed pricing during the life of the contract. So we have an expectation of what we can do with that contract and how far those funds will go. Flexibility, again, typically at the time of the advertisement and award of these contracts, we don't necessarily know exactly what issues we'll have or how what sites we'll need to improve. So this gives us flexibility with kind of unknown needs on the horizon, if you will. We have great expertise, because we're pulling from a pool of contractors that are, this is their game, this is what they do. So we have the best contracts competing for these contractors, rather. Emergency response is key and obviously near and dear to us. So we're able to respond quickly to emergencies. And it also gives us kind of the authority or the purview to manage this. So our construction arm does administer the contracts once they're awarded, but on the engineering side, we work closely with them and we kind of manage how the tasks are doled out and kind of program it out. Obviously, on the front end during procurement, we have a big hand in that as well. And then just to touch kind of back on the other signing specific delivery method, the facility wide, those are typically standalone contracts. And what we're doing there is typically trying to capture a large chunk of the facility or all the facility when most of the signs are beyond state of good repair or nearing that point in their life. So it's more of a life cycle mechanism. And this gives us consistency, having generally all the new signs on a similar cycle. And also anytime there's a significant change in our standards or guidelines, we can kind of capture that in one fell swoop. But those varieties are typically a little cost prohibitive to include on the on-calls. They have a little bit of a higher price tag, so we usually need to advertise those independently. Moving to slide 9. Again, the scope of the on-call is for highway signing, new installations, modifications of existings, removal of existing in some cases. It does cover all MDTA facilities. Talked a little bit about the materials and the supports. One other thing that I didn't mention, kind of too much is the sign lighting. So there is ancillary items outside of just the sign supports and the sign faces. We have lighting, we have traffic barrier, and these contracts also help us if our structures inspectors find any structural defects related to the signs or those ancillary devices. We can ask our contractor to help with that as well. And then the next slide, 10 here, just gives a quick rundown of the last handful of contracts. You can see going back to September of 2013, MA 2665 there, we had 25 task orders totaling about $2.5 million, all the way to our current active contract, MR 3024, which so far has 27 task orders issued to date, contract value of $5 million, and another 3-year contract. So typically, we're on a 3-year cycle with these. cost has trended up over the last few cycles, but we've held sort of a steady 5 to 6 million over the last 3. So yeah, that's kind of the outlook. We're looking forward to MR 3037, which is in the final stages of procurement. And as of a couple weeks ago, I was hearing it looked like we should be looking for an award on that in the next month or so. And then the last few slides here, starting at slide 11, are just some examples of task orders. The all electronic tolling conversions over the last several years have been using these contracts in many cases to install the infrastructure to support the tolling equipment, so that you can see the sign gantries there. That's one example. We also used these contracts for emergency fire exit signing in the tunnel in FMT a few years ago. Moving to slide 12, it shows a couple bullets here, the structural defects, as I mentioned. So one of the common things is loose hardware, such as loose anchor bolts or nuts. So as soon as we find those, we, in some cases, will have maintenance, but in other cases have our on-call help with making those repairs. And then, of course, damage signs when you get a knockdown. That may be, again, something that maintenance can't do or doesn't have the equipment to do. This is a mechanism that we might look for. Moving to slide 13, shows a few more. Again, I mentioned emergencies. So you can see as recently as the Key Bridge collapsed, that we leaned on this contract heavily to get signing changes made swiftly for maintenance of traffic, and then as well as for permanent signing modifications. And then service life. So we have about 7 to 10 years typically before signs start to degrade to a point where we like to replace them. So again, in some cases, we'll handle that with a facility-wide replacement. In other cases, we'll use the on-call to do some of that as well. And then, importantly, anytime we get a elected official or a citizen inquiry that we feel like we need to act on in a signing fashion, this contract series gives us that flexibility and ability to react quickly as needed. And then slide 14, just a couple more examples. I kind of touched on here. Any changes to federal standards or guidelines or policies. A couple examples there. We have a new national manual on uniform traffic control devices that was released last year. We're working on with SHA right now on what that means for Maryland in the next year or so, and what we move forward with, likely a new state manual. We've had various legislation over the years, like move over laws. So some of those, require us to kind of evolve and to react and make changes for our signing along our facilities. And then very importantly, our safety studies. So anytime we have a recommendation for signing improvements coming out of any study, this is one of our key mechanisms, these on-calls, to get any signing changes made in the field. So with that, I think that's all I have, but I will open it up for any questions.
Anybody have questions for Michael? My question is, when we take down these old signs, what happens to them? Do we recycle them or reface them?
Yeah, typically, depending on the age and the condition of the sign, we'll either salvage it and take ownership and maybe store it or repurpose it. I'd say when it's typically beyond its service life and is degraded, we'll just have the contractor scrap it.
Are we ensuring that they're doing that? And the reason why I say this, because there's a lot of aluminum in that sign. I hate to just end up in a landfill if we could be recycling it. Be nice to know if that's actually happening. That's all.
Yeah, I can kind of look into that and provide some more information as a follow-up. I know we have pay items for remove and salvage or remove and dispose, and I can kind of look into that disposal aspect. Get back to you.
I'm just curious. I want folks to look to us for doing good for the world, not just filling up a landfill. Any other questions for Michael? Well, thank you very much and appreciate your
very interesting. 15,000 signs.
Nice. Thank you, Michael.
It's a lot of signs.
Thank you. Take care.
It is a lot of signs. Well, now Melissa Williams is going to present the Chesapeake Bay Crossing Tier 2 NEPA study, which was actually presented at recent open houses. So I thought actually at the executive director's request, I thought this was a great idea to present to you guys. So you can kind of be up to date on that.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Good morning. My name is Melissa Williams. I'm the Director of Planning and Program Development. And Heather Lowe, who is the Planning and Community Engagement Manager, is going to present with me today. As Member Ganjemi said, we are here to provide you with an update on the Bay Crossing Study. I apologize. I just realized I forgot to number my slides, so I'm just going to say next slide. I'm sorry about that. Looking at our agenda, I'm going to go through a little bit of the schedule, where we've come from, where we're headed. A little bit of a summary of the December 2024 public open house meetings. And I'll talk to you a little bit about the elements, the alternative elements and options that we looked at. Then I'll turn it over to Heather, and she'll talk to you about the alternatives recommended for detailed study that will be included in the draft environmental impact study. And what's next, where we're headed, how the rest of the project will play out. I am going to apologize. I'm a little bit sick, so please bear with my voice. I'm sorry. So the next slide we're looking at is our schedule. Let's go one more. We have a slide that shows, looks like a road, and tells you Tier 2 study schedule. A little bit of a recap. The Tier 2 study began in June of 22. And very quickly after that, we met with the public in September of 22 to provide a summary of the Tier 1 study and to kick off the Tier 2 study by sharing the objectives of Tier 2 and laying out the schedule, and really just opening up to get input from the public about what they thought was needed at the existing location. Quick summary there. Tier 1, we looked at different corridors throughout the bay. Outcome of Tier 1 was that improvements are needed at the existing bridge location in order to make improvements to moving traffic across the existing bridge. From September 2023 to June 24, we developed our draft purpose and need and developed the preliminary alternatives, which we shared with the public at the open houses in September of 2023. From that point, we had a very exciting milestone on November 15th, 2024, which was publishing of the Notice of Intent to prepare an environmental impact statement in the Federal Register. Essentially, this is the Federal Register announcement that the project is moving forward. A great deal of work goes into the project before this point, but from this point, our 2-year clock gets ticking. So though it doesn't look like looks like we're just, I don't know, almost halfway on our chart here. Really, the rest of the road, we're going to be moving very quickly. So in December of 2024, we did have our public open houses. If you'll notice, we're trying to host open house meetings and contact meetings with the public once a year around the September to December, like the fall time period. And we anticipate doing that throughout the rest of the study. Kind of keeps people on a time schedule with us. In addition, there are outreach opportunities occurring throughout the study, but our main public outreach effort, which is our public open house meetings, generally occur in the late summer, early fall. Looking at the December public open house meetings. Sorry. Okay, overall, the public open houses were very successful. We hosted a total of 3 open house meetings. We had the virtual open house meeting on December 4th, and then 2 in-person meetings, one on December 9th and one on December 11th. December 9th was at the Broadneck High School, and December 11th was at the Kent Island High School. During the online open house meetings, Heather, Haria Ahmad, who is our Assistant Community Engagement Manager, and I, the 3 of us walked through the open house information that was being presented at all 3 of the meetings. So all 3 of these meetings had the same information, just different opportunities for people to attend according to their schedules. The same information that we shared is available online at baycrossingstudy.com. You can go to the public engagement bar, drop down at that drop down, select previous meetings and events, and there you'll be able to see several things. Excuse me a minute. I apologize. There you'll be able to review the most recent NEPA document, which is the Notice of Intent. You'll be able to participate in the open house survey. The open house survey is open until January 13th. So if you are interested in participating, got a couple days left. Now, that's not to say that we don't take comments throughout the study. It's simply we open up a comment period for these open houses, we close it, and then we're able to summarize what we heard at that meeting. We continue to take public comment throughout the project at any time. You can watch the online open house meeting, which includes the questions and answer session, where people called in with questions and Heather, Haria, and I answered those questions online live. It was a bit of a flurry. We answered over 90 questions in this 2-hour meeting. There's an awful lot of information to listen to. You could also enter the virtual information room online. Basically, when you click on virtual information room, it looks like a room with displays set up where you can virtually walk up to each of the displays and view it from your computer or from your telephone. You can also simply scroll down to the bottom of the page where it says Open House Meeting Materials and see everything I just discussed plus more, including maps that show the environmental features within the study area, as well as a mapping of the 6 build alternatives. So overall, in summary, we had a total of 756 attendees at the 3 open house meetings, which we consider great attendance. We are noticing that our online meetings get an awful lot of attendance. We think that's largely because it's convenient for folks. They don't have to go anywhere. They can watch the meeting from home. So some of the feedback that we heard at those meetings, we received an awful lot of compliments to MDTA regarding our highly knowledgeable staff, thanking us for having this knowledgeable staff available to interact with public and answer one-on-one questions at the in-person meetings, as well as answering as many questions as possible in the online meetings. We were complimented on the quality of the displays, and particularly the compliment that I was most proud of for the team was that people said we took the very complex engineering information and translated it into everyday understandable language. And I think that's really the most important thing that we do. We take this complex information, we need to make it readable, understandable, so that people can give us their input on the right information so they understand what we're proposing, so that they can give their thoughts and their input, and we can use that input to inform our decisions. We also received a lot of support for a new bridge. In fact, people want to know when we're going to start construction and when it's going to be done. People also got so detailed as to ask, okay, now we want this new bridge, when's it happening, and let me know what your construction sequencing is. So that was kind of exciting for us to hear. People are also eager to see how the new bridge will impact the local roadway and how we'll interact with the local roads. Looking at our environment, at the natural environment, folks were concerned about impacts to Sandy Point State Park, Terrapin Park, and the adjacent marinas. We also received a lot of public input about folks saying they thought it would be nice to see a shared use path across the bridge. Shared use path meaning basically access for bicycles and pedestrians to be able to walk or roll across the bridge. So I'm going to move into our alternative elements and options study. Sorry, alternative elements and options. I want to show you some of the key information that was presented at the open houses. And the way I'd like to explain the elements and the options is my favorite analogy, which is buying a car. You don't walk into a car dealer and say, I want to buy a vehicle. you do your research and you decide what elements and options you want in a vehicle first. You look at elements, something like how many seats? Do you want 2, 5, 8, or even 15 seats in the vehicle? Well, those are the options that you have under the element of number of seats. So this is exactly what we did with our elements and options. So the 8 elements we analyzed are existing bridges, structure type, alignments relative to 5301, number of lanes, structure location, transit, TSM TDM, which is Transportation Systems Management, Transportation Demand Management, and shared use path. Within each of these elements, we analyzed the different options. For example, under the existing bridges element, we analyzed 2 options. Remove both existing bridge spans and keep one or both existing bridge spans. So as you can see in the graphic, remove both existing bridges is in the maroonish color. This means that we're carrying the option forward for detailed study. And keep one or both existing bridge spans is grayed out. That means that we're not carrying this option forward. At the open houses and in the online materials, there's much more detail about each of these elements and options and the way we went about choosing whether to carry forward or drop the different options. This is just a summary slide. So I'm going to quickly go through each of these elements with you, but please remember, if you want additional information, that is all available online now. In fact, there are display boards explaining each of these elements and options in great detail. So we'll look at our next element, which is our structure type. The options were full bridge, full tunnel, bridge tunnel combination, or double-decker bridge. We analyzed all of these options and chose or are proposing to move forward with a full bridge option. Full bridge meaning 2 bridges across the bay. Looking at the alignments relative to 5301, on existing alignment or off existing alignment were the 2 options we looked at. Realizing that the corridor is very constrained, we chose to remain on the existing approach alignment to 5301. Number of lanes, which is similar to the analogy I gave of number of seats in your car, we looked at several different options. 666, 686, 888, 810, 10, or more than 10 lanes. And you say, what do the 3 numbers mean? You can look below. It says, for example, 686. 6 lanes is the number of lanes on the western shore. 8 is the number of lanes on the actual crossing, the actual bridge, it's Bay Crossing itself. And 6 lanes is the number on the eastern shore. So you can vary between the western, the bridge, and the eastern shores. Based on traffic analyses, we decided to move forward with 686, 888, and 810-8. The next element is structure location. We looked north of the bridge location, south of the bridge location. Now keep in mind, we're in the same corridor, so we're talking literally just north of, just south of. Fully in between the 2 bridges or a far south bridge location. Again, much detailed analysis that I urge you to look at on your own time and, look a little more closely to understand why some of these options were dropped. But we chose to look at a North Bridge location and a South Bridge location. And I'm going to give a little bit of pause on that one because Heather is going to explain that in much greater detail in just 2 more slides. Looking at transit, we looked at ferry, high capacity transit, rail, high-capacity transit BRT, and bus service improvements. What we found was that we believe that we can make good quality bus service improvements within the corridor that can make a really great impact on both Anne Arundel and Queen Anne's County transit services. One of the things we're looking at, for example, is a bus only or a bus priority lane. So when traffic gets high, the shoulder could be used for buses to get through. Something interesting, exciting that we're looking at. Now, please remember that this does not preclude things like any kind of ferry service from moving forward in the future, it's simply not an element of this project itself that is looking at addressing the traffic and capacity at the Bay Bridge, because the ferry system truly does not take enough volume off of the bridges to make an impact. But that does not preclude a ferry service from occurring in the future by another entity, sorry. TSM, TDM, again, that's Transportation System Management, Transportation Demand Management. We looked at ramp metering, congestion pricing, interchange consolidation, park and rides, part-time shoulder use, express local lanes, priced managed lanes. These are all of the options that we can look at under TSM, TDM. What we showed was that congestion pricing, interchange consolidation, use of park and rides, and part-time shoulder use could be helpful or warrant additional study for this study. And the last element we looked at was the shared use path. We looked at including a shared use path or not including a shared use path. Again, shared use path means a path that would be separated from the travel lanes, barrier separated, so to ensure safety. And it will be one path that would go in both directions, both east and west. It would be for cyclists, people rolling, and people walking. So this is a whole lot of information, but what I'm going to do now is turn it over to Heather, and she's going to explain how these elements and options came together and formed the alternatives recommended for detailed study. I'll turn it over to Heather now. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa, and good morning and Happy New Year to everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So moving on to the next slide that shows the alternatives recommended for a detailed study. So this is what we presented to the public, saying this is what we think makes sense, and it's a amalgamation, if you will, of all of the different key elements that Melissa just stated. This slide shows all of the alternatives and what we're recommending to carry forward. So we always carry forward a no-build alternative. That's always a possibility with a NEPA study. And we also use that as a basis for comparing the alternatives, the build alternatives. And I apologize about those little critters in the background. So we have the no-build alternative, which is alternative A, and the build alternatives shown underneath. All the build alternatives would include the removal of the existing bridges and replacing them with 2 new bridge spans on the existing approach along US 5301, and all will also include additional study for bus service improvements. So looking underneath that little row there, you can see that each of the build alternatives will also include one of the lane combinations and bridge locations that Melissa mentioned earlier. So alternative B is our 686 alternative, with the meaning that 6 lanes would remain on the eastern shore, 8 lanes on a new bridge structure to those 2 new bridge spans, and then 6 lanes on the western shore. And under alternative B, the location would be just north of the existing bridge spans. Alternative C is the 686 alternative with those the new bridge spans located just south of the existing bridge spans. Alternatives D and E are our 888 alternatives, with alternative D located just north and alternative E just south of the existing spans. And similarly, alternative F is the 810-8 alternative, with the alternative F located just north and alternative G just south of the existing bridge structures. All the build alternatives also include the TSM, TDM measures that Melissa mentioned, additional study of part-time shoulder use, interchange consolidation, park and ride use, and congestion pricing. And we will also, with all of those build alternatives, be considering including that shared use path on the new bridge structure. So moving on to the next slide in your materials, this is another way of looking at the recommended alternatives for detailed study that shows from end to end within the study limits. So we're carrying obviously the no build alternative, which keeps the existing lanes at 6 lanes on the western shore, 5 lanes across the bridge, and 6 lanes on the eastern shore. And I apologize because I think I mixed up western and eastern shore with that last slide. I'm sorry. So moving on, this shows that alternatives B and C would be the 6-8-6 alternatives, with alternative B just north and alternative C just south of the existing bridge. Alternatives D and E are the 8-8-8 alternatives, with alternative D just north and alternative E just south of the existing bridges. And then alternatives F and G are the 8-10-8 alternatives, with alternative F just north and alternative G just south of the existing bridge. Okay, so moving on to the next slide, one of the questions that we were receiving from people is, how in the world would you build a new bridge structure? You wouldn't take away existing capacity, would you? And people are concerned that potentially we would suggest to remove one of the existing spans so that we could build a new span in that general location. And that is not what we would do. Now, this, if you're able to click on the video play button in your materials later, you can watch a short video that demonstrates how we would build a new span or potentially 2 new spans before eliminating the existing spans. You can access that video through your materials or also on our website. If you go to the meeting location and then the virtual information room that Melissa mentioned, or even if you look at the meeting boards. So if, for example, if we were to build an all-south bridge location, we would construct those 2 new spans just south of the existing structure and then remove the existing bridge spans. Similarly, if we were to choose a south and between bridge location alternative or for construction, we would first construct the first new span just to the south of the existing bridge spans and then remove one of the existing bridge spans. Then we would build the next new span before we then remove the second old bridge span. So we're never proposing that we would remove that existing capacity before providing the new capacity. Okay, the next slide here. So the next 3 or 4 slides are another way of looking at the alternatives that we're proposing to retain for detailed study. We have a slide on alternative A, the no build, that very clearly shows the Western Shore has the 6 lanes, the existing Bay Bridge has 5 lanes, and then the Eastern Shore has the 6 lanes. So moving on, the alternatives B and C. This slide shows how we would keep those existing 6 lanes on the Western Shore, build a new bridge that would contain 8 total lanes, and then 6 lanes on the Eastern Shore. Moving on, alternatives D and E shows how on the Western Shore, these alternatives would include 8 lanes, and then the new bridge would be the same 8 lanes, and the Eastern Shore, again, 8 lanes. And alternatives F and G would include the 8 lanes on the Western Shore, 10 lanes on the new bridge, and 8 lanes on the Eastern Shore. And these slides also show how the build alternatives would, all of those build alternatives would include removing the existing bridges, replacing with those 2 new bridge spans along the existing approach alignment on US 5301, and bus service improvements, as well as the consideration of part-time shoulder use, interchange consolidation, park and ride use, and congestion pricing, TSM, TDM options, as well as that shared use path that we've received a lot of comments on, a lot of interest in that. So moving on to the last slide of the slide deck here, what's next? So this is a very busy year for us, and we're very excited to be at this point in the study. So we've presented the recommended alternatives retained for detailed study, and we will move on throughout this year and do that detailed study on those alternatives. We will be preparing the draft environmental impact statement, which will present that detailed study that we've done on the alternatives retained for detailed study. And we will also recommend MDTA's recommended preferred alternative in that draft environmental impact statement that will be published in the fall of 2025. So we're going to be very busy over the next few months, and we're pretty excited about it. So after we publish the draft environmental impact statement, we hold those public hearings to hear public comments and testimony on the information in the draft environmental impact statement. And then after that period, after the comment period is over for the hearings, we'll consider all of the comments that we've heard, all of our coordination with our stakeholders, our resource and regulatory agencies. There's a lot of coordination that goes on there. And we will identify a preferred alternative and prepare a final environmental impact statement and record of decision that identifies the actually selected alternative by the Federal Highway Administration. And we anticipate that the final environmental impact statement and record of decision would be published in late 2026. So we have a busy next couple of years, but we are looking forward to that. And after that, a lot of people say, okay, so what? So when could we potentially see construction? So after the record of this, the FEIS and the record of decision is published, that signifies the end of the NEPA study. But then we move into a phase where we are doing coordination in order to obtain permits, environmental permits for a new structure for that selected alternative, and also detailed design phase. And we could be looking at construction beginning as soon as 2032. All of this information, there's a ton of information out there right now in that notice of intent to prepare an environmental impact statement. So I'd advise or encourage folks to please take a look. All of this information is out there, and we'll be working on a lot more over the next couple of years.
Heather and Melissa, thank you. I do have a
Thank you very
question.
much.
And then
Thank
I
you.
want the committee to, so we've got a preferred, identifying our recommended preferred alternative. Can we make sure we have that discussion amongst us before we publish something like that? Is that something we can do, Bruce? I think that's probably something we should do so that we're all aware of it before it hits the streets. I think we know where we're probably headed, but it's still, I think it'd be great to have that discussion, not only in the capital committee, but also at a board meeting.
Yes, we can. Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
It's a very nice presentation. Really spells it out well, but I hate to be Scrooge, but when you start talking about costs for all these alternatives, I mean, everyone is, you show this, they're all going to want 10, 10, 10, bikeway, all this stuff, because they're not paying for it. But, taxpayers are going to be paying for it. And there's gonna be big differences in the costs of all these options. And it seems like we're just not even worried about that.
It's not even taxpayers, it's the toll money.
No, we
Oh,
absolutely can. Yeah.
You're gonna be
So-
building
We
with
will.
taxpayer dollars, I think.
That's where we
Yeah.
are now, Member Gaines, Jimmy. We are at a point now where, keeping in mind, again, forgive my car analogy, but it just works the best for me. You don't walk into a dealership and say, well, what's the price of a vehicle? Because you have no idea what you're buying, no idea what you're looking at. You need to figure out your elements, your options, what you're looking for. And then once you have these alternates, you want a third row SUV. So you start to get an idea of what these third row SUVs cost. That's where we're at right now. We're at the point where we have the alternatives developed enough to a point where we can start actually figuring out some better costs. Now we do have some ballpark costs, but really that's what we'll be digging into and developing over this year. So when we come out next fall, we'll have numbers to share. We'll have more detailed impact numbers to share, and we can start talking numbers.
Yeah, and please don't forget that the no build alternative is still in there for that comparative of if we don't build, here's what the the cost is, and it's been out in the public, that $3.8 billion number, just to do the system preservation, the other impacts. That's just the dollar amount. That's not what the team talked about in terms of congestion impacts while you maintain the bridge. So we have the range, so we can have that discussion of if you do nothing, if you go pie in the sky, that some people want to see. So we kind of are obligated by the process to show what the maximum, a maximum would be, and then can have that financial discussion moving forward.
Right. I actually sat in on the virtual meeting, so I was one of the however many you had, and I thought it was good. What I liked is you didn't always wait for questions from the audience. You had some kind of already pre-planned out, and there were those questions actually addressed a lot of questions. So I think that was well done. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions from the committee? So just in follow up, you heard Melissa and Heather, and obviously Bruce heard it as well. So now that we're starting to get a little bit more nitty gritty and some decision making going on, might want to hit the Capital Committee up and frankly, you may want to do that for each of the committees, because it's not just a Capital Committee impact; it's a Finance Committee impact as well.
Absolutely. The implications of this, I mean, one of the questions we had to answer is how will this be paid for? Well, it's primarily toll funding. We have to think about whatever federal grants might be eligible, what the implications are of getting federal funding in the future. Availability at that time, can't determine that now when we're not there yet. And then what those impacts are, because it's not in the current program. It's you have a financial consideration coming forward in FY 2028 that you'll be heavily involved in. So we are gearing up for those discussions. Absolutely.
Right. Awesome.
Just as a note, in the past, in my old days, the current second span of the Bay Bridge, if they'd expanded only one more lane, it would have been 22 million in those days, and it was decided not to. So, I mean, it's a little bit different on what you are proposing and what's going to be proposed and what's going to happen.
Interesting.
Interesting times for MDTA in the state of Maryland. Well, thank you both. And before I ask for a motion for adjournment, Eric, thank you for working through all those glitches and get us. You working with your team and getting us up and running. So appreciate that. And Happy New Year to everybody. Look forward to an exciting new year coming through. So I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
So moved by Member Cox, seconded by Member Gaines. Any further discussion?
Great
All
meeting.
in favor,
Great meeting.
say aye.
Thank you. Aye.
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 Aye. I think that's everybody. Awesome. Thank you, and everybody have a great day.
Same
Thank
to
you.